I have had a busy weekend. I went to Philadelphia for a bookstore crawl. I went to 6 bookstores. But better than that, I got to meet up with 2 BookTube friends and just had a total blast. And what could I have gotten? Hello, welcome to my channel. Another bibliophile reads. Early this year, or was it late last year, MJ at Reading This Life pointed out that Philadelphia has a bookstore crawl in August. This is their 2nd year they have done that. And this is really just a way for people to look at all the bookstores in Philadelphia. They have a really rather nice map, and Philadelphia has a whole lot of bookstores. I am incredibly jealous because down here in my area of Virginia, we really do not have a lot of bookstores, but there were more bookstores in Philadelphia that I could have possibly visited in a weekend. I did get to 6, and I will mention each one of those in turn. So MJ had this great idea. Let's meet up in Philadelphia and go on this crawl together. And that's what we did. MJ was there, Hannah at HannahsBooks was there, and there was me. There were a few other people that were going to attend but couldn't quite make it, and I'm really rather sad. That was a book chat with Pat. I would have loved to have her there just to experience the joy of shopping with books with friends and getting out and having dinner with your BookTube buddies, then having lunch, and even a drink at a happy hour afterwards. So all in all, it was a really fun weekend. In order to get to the bookstore crawl, I took the Amtrak train. I live in Fredericksburg, Virginia, and there is a train station not too far away. The parking is only $8 a day. So my wife and I hopped on the train on Friday morning and headed out to Philadelphia. In the evening, we arranged to meet up with MJ and Hannah. Hannah was staying in the same hotel I was, so we met down in the lobby and we walked to downtown Philadelphia. We were going to go to dinner at a restaurant where we were going to meet up with MJ. That restaurant was full, so we wandered around until we found a Thai restaurant. And we had a pretty good Thai meal. And over that meal, we were discussing what we should do that evening, and we scoured through the internet and found a used bookstore that was still open. This was after 7 p.m., and that was mostly books. So we got into an Uber and headed out. And it is one of those really old used bookstores. The organization is there, but it's a little loose. The books are all over the shelves. And the owner was there. I think she said she's been running that bookstore for about 20 years. And it's just one of those wonderful old bookstores that you go into and just wander around the shelves. And I did get a book there. I was going to get a classic science fiction paperback by the author of The Dying Grass, but the price was over $10, or was exactly $10 for what should have been about a $6 book. So I didn't get it, but I did pick up this book. That is The Assistant by Benard. Malamud. I had read The Natural earlier this summer as part of the Summer of Sport, and I really enjoyed that novel. So this book was just sitting on top of some cassettes near the register. My wife was buying one of her books, and MJ said, "Oh, look at this book." And I thought, yeah, I'll pick up this. It didn't have a price, so I talked to the owner, says, "How much for this book?" He says, $2. And I said, perfect, because I like The Natural. This is Benard Malamud's second novel, It is about a grocer in Brooklyn who's trying to get a better life. And things too seem to be looking up once he hires an assistant for his grocery store. Now, I had really wanted to find The Fixer because that is a novel that I had read more than 10 years ago and wanted to reread it, and I had unhauled my paperback. But this was a good substitute. In the morning, we decided to meet at a bookstore called Giovanni's Books. This is a LGBTQ bookstore, and it just happened to be the bookstore closest to the two hotels that we were staying at. So we got out there. It said it opened at 10 a.m., but it didn't open at 10 a.m. It opened at 11. So we went out to a French pastry, and I had a mocha. My wife had a hot chocolate. Hannah and MJ had other drinks, and we just sat chatting for an hour until the bookstore opened. And I did not get any books from that bookstore, just because I didn't find anything that I liked. But it was a wonderfully vibrant bookstore, and they had this really unusual staircase. After that, we walked to a place called Garland of Letters, and we were a little early for the opening, so we stood around with some other people waiting on the bookstore crawl. We had some nice conversations with people who loved books. Inside the bookstore, it was mostly a spiritual bookstore with some spiritual knickknacks. They had some very interesting journal books. I almost picked up one of those journal books because I'm going to be doing the Year of Proust in 2025, and it suggested that I write notes about that book as I'm reading it. But these journals were too beautiful for my handwriting, so I did not get anything at that bookstore. We then headed out to Headhouse Books. That was mostly a new bookstore, and I picked up a couple of things. I like collecting bookmarks, and they have this interesting wooden bookmark. It sort of looks like an old library card where you used to check out books manually. So that was a fun find. I also picked up The Years by Annie Ernaux. This is a memoir from 1941 to 2006 of the author's life. It is translated from the French. It was listed on one of the best books of the 21st century and one of the ones that I was interested in reading. So I decided, even though I can probably get it cheaper on Kindle, just to support your independent bookstores, and got this one. So I am looking forward to that this year or maybe next year. Outside of the bookstore, there is a bench of paperback book ARCs. The sign says, "Please don't steal these books. These books are for people who have purchased a book. And if you purchase a book, you can take a book." And I picked up Ghost Dogs on Killers and Kin by Andre Dubois III. I have read his memoir, Townie. That was quite a number of years ago. I rather enjoyed it. He is the son of Andre Dubois II, who is also a very famous author. So this is a collection of essays, and the biggest, longest essay is about gun ownership. So I am rather encouraged to see what he has to say about that. The next bookstore was the Book Trader, and you walk into the store and there's aisles and aisles of books packed everywhere. They also had a bookstore cat sleeping in the front window. I always appreciate a bookstore cat. So what did I get? I got a number of books from them. The first one was Freedom Road by Howard Fast, originally published in 1944. His dedication in the front of the book reads like this: "To the men and women, black and white, yellow and brown, who have laid down their lives in the struggle against fascism." I have this thing that I'm becoming more and more curious about the rise of fascism in countries. And I'm kind of curious whether this book written in 1944 is still going to be apropos to 2024. The back cover says Freedom Road is the remarkable novel of Gideon Jackson, an ex-slave with a magnificent dream. He meant to form a community of blacks and whites under a lush, deserted plantation, under the burning crosses of the dread Ku Klux Klan. I do want to read this before November, just to see how well it holds up in modern times. Lo and behold, I went to their vintage shelf. I found The Fixer by Benard. This is the book that I had mentioned to MJ as she was showing me the assistant that I wanted to reread. It was only $2.95, so that is a good find for me. This is, I think it's the third or fourth novel that Malamud wrote. It is a historical novel set in 1911 where a man is accused of murdering a Russian boy, and this man is Jewish. I have read this many, many years ago, and I'm excited for the chance to reread it. Lawrence Block, The Girl with the Deep Blue Eyes. I should probably show that wonderful cover. This was recently reviewed for Garbogist. I think it was Jim at Mystery and Mayhem. I'm not entirely sure, but it was read for the prompt nudity on the cover. This is a rather more recent novel by Lawrence Block. It was published in 2015. I don't think this is a reprint. Hard Case Crime often gets reprints, but I think this is an original. And it is the story of a New York police detective who is cashiered out after 24 years, and he goes down to Florida where he gets to solve new crimes. Hard Case Crime is usually a solid bet. Most of their books are pretty good. Every now and then you'll get a dud, but I highly recommend them. I love their covers. I prefer the smaller format paperbacks. When they originally went out of business from Leisure Books, it took a number of years to get back into running, and they resubmitted in these larger paperbacks. I love the mass markets more, but this should still be a good book. After that, we all went for a traditional Philadelphia lunch at Campo's Philadelphia cheesesteak. If you're going to Philadelphia, you kind of have to have a Philly cheesesteak, I think. My Philly cheesesteak was pretty darn good. I would not say it was the best Philly cheesesteak of my life. That goes to the farmer's market in Puyallup, Washington, where they had a man with a food truck, and he just grilled up those Philly cheesesteaks right in front of you. I don't think that was his main profession, but he has the best Philly cheesesteaks that I've ever eaten. And then we kind of split up. My wife and Hannah needed to go back to the hotel to rest, but MJ and I, we took a walk to the Wooden Shoe Books. And this was an anarchist and revolutionary bookstore. They proudly claim it is an all-volunteer bookstore. So the store may not always be open. And I have to say, out of all the bookstores that I visited, I think the Wooden Shoe Books was my favorite because it was an anarchist bookstore. They had lots of books on anarchy. They had lots of weird stickers and interesting books. And I did pick up one. I picked up Anarchy, a graphic guide by Clifford, Harper. And this is just him describing what it means about anarchy. And it is filled with these wonderful woodcut illustrations. And if you look on Amazon, I looked afterwards, I could not see this book for sale on Amazon. This is imported from England, so not usually for sale in the United States. Now, I do not consider myself an anarchist or much of a political revolutionary, but still, I appreciate the effort. I like the passion, the fact that you would run a bookstore on a volunteer basis to get all the profits for your political beliefs. Again, I don't think I would ever be an anarchist, but I don't really know that much about anarchism in the way that anarchists want you to think about themselves. So I got this one, and I hope to read this fairly soon, because I think this is going to be at least an interesting read, and something that I would not normally expect. We shall see. In the evening, Hannah had to go her own way to visit some friends, but my wife and I met up with MJ at a beer garden near the Liberty Bell, where I had this wonderful voodoo lager that was 11% alcohol. I was feeling no pain afterwards. Then we walked to a cookie store where you got to have a cookie with ice cream on top. And that was just a wonderful way to end a great weekend. I am so thankful that I got to meet up with Hannah and MJ. I would really like to do another bookstore crawl, not necessarily in Philadelphia. I would also suggest maybe not doing an official sanctioned event like this bookstore crawl was in Philadelphia, because the bookstores were really crowded. And that in itself is probably a good thing, that people get out to go to these bookstores. But if I were to do it again, I would say to my fellow booktubers, let's pick a place, a weekend, and meet, and then get an itinerary of bookstores to go visit. And you can have a lunch, and you can have a beer, and you can just have a really good time with these friends on BookTube that you rarely get to meet. If I had to pick the next bookstore crawl, I would say let's do New York City. I say that because for me, it's just a train ride up from Fredericksburg. And I don't have to fly, I don't have to drive, but I'm really rather open to other ideas. What other great cities could we meet in and have another bookstore crawl? Thank you, everyone, for watching, and keep on reading.